Welcome to The Road. This is a weekly podcast of All Saints Lutheran Church. I'm your host, John Pedersen, and I serve as pastor. Each week, we reflect on faith, life, and navigating the road ahead. The language of journey is common when we think about life. It has its joys and challenges along the way, and we all need a little encouragement and guidance at times to keep us going. There's a word in the Bible, asphalia, which means truth, but it's the same root word we use in English for asphalt, if you can believe that. It's a solid surface that makes travel easier and more assured. And so every week we're going to be exploring elements of faith and life that keep us on the road. Faith isn't about living a perfect life. It's about finding our way, getting through rough spots, but seeking out those great vistas too. You can find my weekly message here, but you'll also find special conversations with guests who have insights on things like wellness, parenting, and living with unique purpose. If you appreciate this podcast, remember to subscribe where possible and share it with a friend. Here's this week's message. So we've left the season of Easter behind. During that time, we talked about the implications of Jesus and his death and resurrection and the days that followed for the disciples. The time leading up to Holy Week and the days and weeks then that followed after were unstable and at times a threatening environment for the disciples. They had to overcome fear and their identification with a rabbi and a Messiah who had been seen as a threat to the empire. In this season of Pentecost in the life of the church, though, we're picking up stories that take us back to an earlier time of Jesus and his ministry, but the people in that region and time still face the same fundamental challenges under the oppressive weight of the Roman Empire. Jesus and the disciples represented a new vision of community, and any new vision will always face doubts and pushback. Many of us who are shaped or even simply intrigued by Christian faith are often drawn to the teachings of Jesus. We ask, what is the core message of Jesus that might be relevant to me or to us today? What wisdom and insight is there to be gained? And I love that dimension of Christian faith personally. It's why I enjoy leading adult studies and even preaching, and that intellectual component of faith is important. But today's gospel reminds us that this isn't the only part. Jesus started a movement that transforms community. Jesus is sending his disciples out on their own, and he says, as you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. But he follows that up by saying, cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Now there's a lot to unpack in that list of instructions, but the one thing that's clear is that this new realm brings healing. It brings spiritual restoration, generosity, and peace, and it extends into the wider world. This is a vision for community and humanity that encompasses the whole life and well-being of people. It's a vision for healing and renewal that doesn't just change the lives of individuals or makes them think differently, but it renews the whole community as relationships are restored. Unhealthy patterns end so that the fabric of the whole society can be repaired and made whole again. And this isn't just sort of a random, unique passage. This resonates with so much of what Jesus represented, and in fact, the long history of our Judeo-Christian tradition. And in modern times, we have often separated mind and body and the rational and spiritual or emotional facets of life. And there are historical reasons for this, but our humanity and existence just can't be split up like that. And in the postmodern period we're in, we've been moving past that to see ourselves in more holistic terms. And that's exactly what Jesus represented. As Jesus sent the disciples out to share the message and the well-being that comes with that, we can begin to see and experience that there is a kind of vibe that accompanies faith. There's a rhythm and feeling that it evokes. It's one of the reasons why even those who aren't Christian can often sense that something is off when a movement that claims to be Christian, but from that movement, there's no sense of compassion or peace emanating from it, no sense of renewal or grace. Today's gospel and others remind us to find that groove where the gospel message and its inspiring and healing effects are in harmony again. Do you ever listen to music after many years and it brought you back to an earlier time? There's a part of you that feels complete or inspired again in ways that you didn't even realize were missing from your life. This past week, I mentioned at our staff meeting that one of my favorite bands from earlier decades went on tour again. The band is Rush. I think I got a couple of scrunched faces when I said that, and they were like, "Really, Rush?" Huh? For those of you who don't know, Rush was a power trio, a progressive rock band that spanned about 5 decades. They stopped making music and touring 11 years ago, I think it was, and 5 years later, their drummer Neil Peart passed away from cancer. He was known as one of the best rock drummers of all time, but he was also their lyricist, known for his philosophical and literary approach. His words were sometimes a little quirky, but they also had a humanitarian and vulnerable quality to them, and his voice was reflective, independent, confident, and yet thoughtful. No one imagined Rush could go on without him, but over the last year, the 2 remaining bandmates, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson, found a new drummer, Annika Niles, and they announced they would tour again. With some second guessing and a year of fans waiting, they made their first tour stop. Hundreds of fans were uploading their YouTube videos at the concert, and Rush fans everywhere were listening online by last Monday, and fans everywhere were just marveling because Annika brought the music back that we didn't fully realize had been missing. You know, you could just hear the joy in the audience and the embrace of this new part of the team. There's something about a live performance that you can't replicate. She matched the precision and power of Peart's rhythm and fills while bringing her own style, and she allowed his voice to be heard again along with his original bandmates. And I have to say, it's okay if Rush is not your thing, but as I reflect on hearing their sound again, I believe Christian faith also has its own vibe. It has a kind of sound. It's not a mistake that Christian worship is almost always accompanied by music, even if it's simple words chanted or sung a cappella or in different styles. Music connects neural pathways, values, feelings, beliefs, and the lives that we want to live for ourselves and for the sake of the world. The life, death, resurrection, and spirit of Jesus resonates with our souls. It goes beyond music we simply enjoy. The words of one of the earliest known hymns of the church is recorded in Paul's letter to the Philippians. It's one that I come back to often. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, assuming human likeness. And being found in appearance as a human, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him even more highly and gave him the name that is above every other name. I don't know if that resonates with you, but it resonates with me. It's the idea that someone with the power of God chose to be humble and not exploit that power. Jesus eventually opted to become a servant for the sake of others, and that is a song worth singing. It's a song that still needs to be heard. The disciples who went out and shared the message and the healing that it brought to the world are gone now. Someone else needs to pick up the words and the rhythm and the melody so that it can be heard again for this new age and the one to come. We stand in the midst of a world that is often unhealthy. We see some invert the message of the gospel into words of domination, power, and control rather than that kind of humility that Jesus represented. We watch as the world at times goes in a direction that seems so far from the composition of the gospel and the values at the heart of it that we can feel a bit hopeless or cynical. In the same way that today can seem daunting and improbable to us, Jesus looked out into a world that his disciples, with his disciples, and saw something similar. He noticed that people were like sheep without a shepherd, harassed, To extend the analogy, in other words, on their own, you could imagine they would have been vulnerable to wild animals or thieves preying on them. This is what it would have felt like for the masses subject to the weight and whims of a powerful empire. As Jesus himself had been teaching and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness, he now asked his disciples again to cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. Now, I don't possess any special skills when it comes to curing the sick or cleansing skin diseases. Maybe we have some dermatologists around. I don't have any experience with raising the dead yet, although one woman I prayed with once seemed to have come out of her coma for a minute to recite the Lord's Prayer for me. It's about as close as I get. Most of us here probably have trouble with the language of demons, but we can certainly imagine and point to examples where people today have had their freedoms and humanity undermined by forces and powers beyond them, whether they are mystical or this worldly. Powers that defy the grace and joy at the heart of the gospel. Jesus sent his students out into a world that no doubt gave them pause, and perhaps they felt ill-equipped for the moment. And he told them to share this new community and realm of healing and wholeness generously. He said, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." You know, it's particularly at those times when the realm of God's grace and love seems the most at odds with the order of the day that the people who know the tune of the good news are needed the most. God didn't call us to be a transformational community to simply maintain what was handed down to us as if we could do no more, but to be the ones to actually mold a new reality, patterned after the realm of God. If our focus is on seeing immediate transformation of a community and society, we might lose patience. But our mission is not only about the final destination or some future goal or change. It's about the experience on the way. It's about the community we're building and the relationships that we share and restoring life in all its fullness. Within this new community, we are building a true experience of what Jesus spoke about. Christian faith provides space for us to bear witness to struggles and loss, even as we press on to hope. And so today you're called to join the movement, reconnect with the music and the rhythms of the gospel, and find ways to share it in whatever you do well, whether it's in relationship with others, through your work, in your neighborhood, in your creative skills, or in your passionate advocacy. Every act of faith allows the good news to resonate once again, for the community of Christ to rise, and for joy and healing to be shared. Amen. That's this week's message. You don't have to navigate the road ahead alone. You can join with others at All Saints. Visit allsaintsmtka.org for more information. Have a great week.